Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Lights on Data Show. My name is George Firican, and I am your host. Now, imagine you're in retail. You're juggling countless data points. You're trying to optimize operations, enhance customers' experience, and of course, in the end, you want to just grow your business. But it feels like you're navigating this maze of disconnected insights. And for some, that's best case scenario. For others, it's all about anecdotal decision making. That's not too good. So, what if I told you that the secret to unlocking the potential of data informed retail decision making lies into the one thing, and that's data strategy? So, today we're joined by Zainulabedin Shah, who's the co founder and CEO of Zeed, a trailblazer in the world of data strategy and AI. He has over 18 years of experience transforming businesses through innovative data solutions. Zainulabedin, or Zain, as most people know him by, has seen firsthand how cohesive data strategy can turn retail challenges into massive opportunities. So, whether it's streamlining inventory or personalizing marketing, data is at the core of the success stories that we're going to dive into today. Welcome, Zain.
Thank you so much, George. I appreciate the introduction and I'm happy to be here.
Likewise. Now, you've had an incredible journey from helping a 2 million auto startup grow into a 70 million business to leading data-driven transformations across multiple industries. Can you please start by sharing that pivotal moment early in your career where you realized just how powerful data could be in driving business outcomes?
Yeah, absolutely. My first job out of business school, actually, I was a risk management consultant for a
Hmm.
commercial insurance company. And they were one of our clients was senior living, assisted living, nursing homes. That was the nature of the company. And they were having trouble allocating their cost for their support team to make sure that it was being booked appropriately. And it reflected sort of the operational KPIs and the financial P&L integrated together in a way to understand that cost. So I built a cost allocation system and I didn't think anything of it at the time. It just seemed like this is part of my job. This is what I'm here to do. I understand your business. I understand how to help you with your cost of risk. I'm good at Excel. I'll build a model for you.
Hmm.
And it repeatedly generated praise from the client because of the value of leveraging data to help create a more informed picture of how they ran their business. And that was the first time I really got an inkling into, maybe there's more to the data world than just being an analyst, that there's actually a way to use data to help businesses grow, transform,
Yeah.
it inform them in a different way than kind of traditional, thinking.
Yeah. This, reminds me of the Clive Humby story. Clive Humby is the one that's credited to say and come up with the saying, data is the new oil, which I know it's a bit of a controversial saying. People don't agree with it. Some people are okay with it. But really, in the end, what he was trying to say is that data is valuable. And that's when he was working for Tesco, which is this supermarket in the UK.
Yep.
And he was mining all this data. It's like, oh my God, there's so many insights in here. This data that they're collecting about their customers is so much more valuable than they think it is.
I tend to agree with that line of thought. I will often compare data to water in
Hmm.
terms of a resource,
Hmm.
but oil has its place, don't get me wrong, but water is invaluable. We require water at every step of our life, right? We're
Right.
mostly water.
Right.
And so I think in today's day and age, data is just as valuable, right? You can't
Right.
operate a business or an organization successfully without understanding your data and how to consume it, how to resource allocate it properly to help you really grow.
Right. So, Zain, I'm curious, in the world of retail, is it common to see decisions based on gut feelings or past experiences?
So over my career, it's become, I want to say, less common
Yeah.
because more companies have certainly gotten in touch with their data and how to understand at least portions of it. When I started in retail, it was extremely common to
Hmm.
leverage experience. Senior leaders who have been in retail for 20, 30 years and they know the market and they know their customers and they know the products, so their experience should be leveraged, right? And I think there's a place for experiential decision making, absolutely, right? It's not to dismiss it. But when you have data and you can interpret it and align that understanding of what the data is telling you with that experiential input, now I think you can make more well-informed decisions. What I would say I still see now is, especially with traditional retailers, understanding how to put together an integrated view of the data right? You still might have examples where the sales organization is looking at their own data, the finance organization is looking at their own data, the marketing organization is looking at their own data. But how are they integrating that data and integrating their sort of own divisional perspectives on organizational success
Yeah,
to make collective and comprehensive decisions? I think there's a lot of opportunity in that space still.
for sure. And yeah, not easy. And what you said about the experience, which is valuable, and we shouldn't push it aside. Maybe we should call it data informed decisions. So it's not only data driven. You have a place for the experience and maybe even the gut feeling at times.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for that. I think data driven is become um, it's almost played out because for people who aren't purveyors of data, I think George data driven suggests this idea that we'll just simply follow whatever the data tells us to do.
Right.
And that's also dangerous. That's just as
Right.
dangerous as simply dismissing the data. So yeah, I prefer the term data informed. I think
Hmm.
that's a great way to frame it.
So for those retailers that they want to build and optimize their data strategy, well, it kind of seems like a daunting task. It seems like they need to boil the ocean. What are the steps that they should take in creating their data strategy? What are those key components of a successful data strategy?
Sure. So what we like to do, how we approach it is first aligning across the organization on business strategy. Right, that's the first place we try to break through those silos and have leaders across the organization aligned on what's the organizational business strategy. In other words, how will we measure success? What are the KPIs you're focusing on at the enterprise level? Let's allow that to inform what the data strategy should be, right? So through discovery, cultivating use cases for the business that support the business strategy successful
Hmm.
execution, that will inform how we start doing work to build out a data strategy. We don't want the data work to be independent of the business strategy, even if it's an amazing idea, right? Where you're leveraging all the coolest technology. If it can't actually create meaningful value for the business, that's not a good use of resources for the organization.
Right. So business strategy first, and then data strategy. It needs to align to it, and that's how it's done.
That's how it starts, right? And then I think a big part of that also is, especially amongst traditional companies who aren't maybe as data literate, or certainly companies which aren't data fluent, is getting them to understand, how would I say it, framing their questions by empowering them to understand their data, right? So there's often an enablement piece which comes with that. Like how the example I would give you is chief sales officer comes with questions which are totally relevant, but the data actually may lend itself to answering better and different questions as well.
Mm,
So how do you have that dialogue to make sure that the questions that he or she may be asking are really going to help the organization at large based on what the data supports? I've worked in several organizations and with several organizations, right, as a consultant, where the data folks tend to operate as order takers, right? And so I think part of bringing business strategy and data strategy together is to have the people who have their hands on the data to educate them more about the business, and simultaneously educate the people who are operating the business, who are responsible for the P&L, to really understand what the data is capable of delivering for them.
right. Yeah, I love that. Hopefully data governance is part of the strategy as well, and then you can have the data stewards, which would be from the business side, and they come in with all that knowledge, all that experience, and the acumens and the context and everything to make sure that the data is managed properly and within the context that's been working in. I wonder, from your experience in working with all these retail companies, is there a particular department where the need for the data strategy kind of like sparks? Is it like the marketing department or the supply chain, or is it just the organization as a whole that sees that need?
I would say, so where I've worked the most closely is with sales, kind of frontline sales. Where I think the need is the greatest is with marketing,
Hmm.
right? Sales, your organizations are spending money, but it's at an individual level or at a location level, even at a channel level. It's not to the same extent as marketing, where you're generating demand across the enterprise, across channels.
Right.
That's where I think the most sophisticated understanding of data is really required. Like I would say the chief marketing officer and the chief technology officer should be best friends, right? If you have that kind of synergy working at the executive level, I think you'll drive a lot more value out of your marketing spend
Mm-hmm.
and understanding what the return is in terms of generating demand and how you're converting that demand
Mm-hmm.
into sales.
Mm-hmm. So just to backtrack a little bit on the data strategy piece, just want to find out a little bit more of those about the key components of a successful data strategy. So you mentioned the alignment to the business strategy. You touched upon data literacy, that overall stakeholder engagement and understanding, probably some sort of an ownership and sponsorship of it. Anything else?
Yeah, no, I think the data governance piece, as you mentioned, is key,
Yeah.
right? That really illustrates that the senior leaders, the executives of the organization, have stake in the game, right? They understand the business definitions of the data, and so when this data work is being done, they can successfully measure those outcomes based on their own understanding of what the definitions are,
Mm-hmm.
and then actually allocating people on their team, as you mentioned, the data stewards, to contribute in a meaningful way in some regular process to make sure that the data needs of the organization are being prioritized and executed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think once that's in place and you have data strategy aligned with business strategy, a good data governance process, which sort of supports buy-in across the organization. Now it's about making sure that you're working at a cadence that meets the needs of the business, right?
Yeah.
I'm a long agile practitioner, and I think it's over time kind of gotten a bad name because a lot of teams will like break waterfall. Example, take 6 months of a waterfall style project and break it into 2 week deliverables, and now
Mm-hmm.
they're working in agile, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that necessarily creates short term incremental value for organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So I think part of that is also understanding what you can commit to organizationally based on the resources you have, and not promising, you're going to be sprinting at full speed when you're still learning how to crawl.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. And again, it depends where you are in the maturity model of your data strategy. You can have that different cadence and frequency of that, and it's definitely harder when you start. But at the same time, there's also some low hanging fruit that you can benefit from. But then things might get harder after the fact too. Are there any examples from your work that you can share where you've seen a well implemented data strategy that is not only solving a problem, but also significantly enhancing that retailer's overall operations?
Sure. So I used to work with a well-known national brand, and they were going through, we'll call it an organizational transformation, right? Being here in the San Francisco Bay Area, what big tech companies do often infiltrates the mindset of executives in more traditional industries. But then the question is, do you have the resources available to execute some of those things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what's really required, as I mentioned earlier, is data, right? You need to understand how to make good use of your data. So what we did was we implemented a new business intelligence framework, a new analytics framework, because that's what users understand. The users, while they can appreciate, they don't really care about the sausage making, right? The data architecture, the data engineering, do you have good ETL pipelines? That's irrelevant to them. They just want to be able to consume the data they need
Yeah.
to make good
Yeah.
decisions. And so part of it was representing all of the data that our stakeholders were consuming in a new analytics framework, which made it easier for them to understand, right? Better visualizations, simplified story. And then part of that was also education. So we had a big supporter with our chief sales officer. He had a technical background, so he
Mm-hmm.
inherently understood all this stuff. We spent about 6 months working with the regional sales leaders as we developed this kind of new analytics product to get them to understand not only how to interpret it, but also take ownership of it. So when they were holding their location managers or their channel leaders accountable, they could answer business questions based on the data they were looking at, right? Versus any quote unquote data question would come back to my team.
Yeah.
It's like, and we're happy to engage with you there, but we need you to understand how data is an integral part of operating your business. So that translated into the biggest 3 year turnaround in the company's growth, which was over 100 years old at the time, or still is, I guess, but 117 years or so at the time. And it was rooted in the fact that we had a foundational set of data that we could leverage to understand operational performance by channel, by location, by product.
Hmm.
And now there was the data informed culture also drove a culture of accountability, because now, for example, George, you and I are sitting in the same location and we're working side by side, and your numbers are astronomically good and mine not so good.
Yeah.
And now the data is showing that we have the same opportunity to convert, into sales, and you're killing it and I'm not. Now it's easier. We're enabling convenience and ease for our manager to have a different type of coaching discussion with me, right? Versus with you, it might be, George, that's great. What support do you need to keep it going? Hey, Zan, we notice, you're not making the most of your opportunity. That's what the data is telling us.
Mm-hmm.
Let's align the data up with what your story is and
Mm-hmm.
figure out how we can get your results where they need to be, right? But then doing that at organizational scale, that was really the win for the organization and the win for my team specifically.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Thank you for sharing that. And I know there's many more success stories where that came from as well. And it's always good to take a look at these successful examples to learn, see what's possible, have sort of a guidance beacon that you can go towards as well. Though, of course, everything is kind of your own story and needs to be modeled upon your own needs. I do want to ask about AI, machine learning. Obviously, in the past couple of years, they've taken a little bit more focus into the eyes of the CEOs and the CXOs. And we can also see that they have, for years now, increasingly shaping the future of retail. What role do you see that these technologies are playing in the continued optimization of retail operations?
I would say where AI will generate the most value in the short term is really automation of manual repetitive tasks. That's where I see the most value. How I think a lot of people interpret that is people being replaced by machines.
Hmm.
And I don't think about it that way. And increasingly, I find myself maybe in a small but hopeful minority that that's not the case. But if we look at how technology's evolved over time, even going back to like the first industrial revolution, typically what happens is technology does eliminate some subset of jobs. That's, no question about that. But it creates growth and new jobs, right? So what I would expect to see are companies being able to, or maybe again, this is being hopeful, companies being able to identify opportunities for low value transactional type work to be automated. Let's let the machine do the work. Yeah, just basic information being cascaded to a consumer, right? What's the price of this? What are your store hours? Just simple examples.
Yeah.
And then the higher value work where a human being can actually deliver that excellent human personal interaction and experience, creating more opportunities and developing training programs to enable more of that into the future. That's what I see. I'm hopeful that that's what happens because we live in a bottom line world.
Hmm.
And especially with companies where they're publicly traded and they have quarterly goals they have to meet, AI can be perceived as a shiny tool to draw, create ruthless efficiency. And I think it has that application. I don't think that's necessarily the best long-term strategy of how to implement successful AI.
Oh, for sure. I remember the story. I think it was maybe from a year ago, and there was this nonprofit organization. I think they were handling something on like eating disorders. I forgot what it's called, but and it's better not to name it anyways. But what they've done is they had this call center where people would call for help and mention their problems, and these health experts would give them some sort of a medical advice and all these things for these individuals to get the help that they need. And what they've done is they've implemented a AI chatbot that would be able to have conversational um, advice being given to those that are calling, and it was pretty good. I was performing really well in terms of, hey, you didn't quite know that you were speaking to an AI. And what they've done is they've fired all of their medical experts. Anybody that was answering the call, they fired them. I mean, it's the story is bigger. They were like trying to unionize, and there were other reasons as well why the company would kind of went in that direction. But bottom line is, within a week after they launched this chatbot, I think it was called Tess or Bess, something like that, they had to shut it down because it was starting to give really dangerous, incorrect advice. As you can imagine, in the end, based on this decision, removing the human aspect, they've suffered huge reputational damage. They've stopped these individuals from getting the help that they need, and probably there's like monetary issues that are related to it as well. And in the end, it's really because of the data that was trained. They kind of let it scour the internet and use that as training data sets. And as we know, the internet is
Mm,
full of great stuff, but also some
yeah.
questionable
Also, some
recommendations.
not so
And
great stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, lessons learned. And hopefully, this doesn't happen with other companies that are seeing AI as a full replacement for the human talent and skills.
So that is a great slash terrible story, right? A great example, I think, of of misapplication of technology. We're working with a dental practice right now, so in retail framework, think of it as it's dental service as a retail service, right? And one of the things we're exploring is how to introduce AI into the call answering system, right?
Hmm.
And I've been through this with a call center as well, so that's why I'm trying to take those lessons and apply them
Yeah,
here. And the initial excitement was like, this is great. We can have the machine answer all the phone calls. And then as we started peeling it back, it's like, well, some people actually need to talk to someone,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And no matter how sophisticated the AI is and how well trained the data is in the model that's enabling the application, it still won't replace that human experience. So what's actually the value to the business? If I can have an AI gather some routine information and populate my, uh, management system, right? So when I get to a human being, the data is already populated. That's an amazing use,
Oh, for sure.
right? If I can distill the transactional calls versus the calls which require a human being and siphon all those transactional calls to be handled by the AI. So the person sitting there at the desk who has a phone ringing, but also has a patient sitting across the desk from them, can handle both of those at once in a timely way to create a good customer experience. That's a good use of AI. So I think, unfortunately, the example you provided is all too common.
Yeah. I've seen good examples as well. I remember this other call center. I think it was from again a nonprofit. I believe it was in Norway. It's a name that I can't even pronounce just because I feel it has so many consonants in a row. But basically, it's a helpline for kids, and the AI that they've developed to help the whole conversational aspect was a bit of a helping crutch. So it was monitoring the conversation in real time. And based on the topics that they were discussed between the kid that was calling and whoever was picking up the phone call on the helpline and it was then identifying again the topics and then providing relevant information to the person answering the call. So things like, if people were asking, hey, my parents are getting a divorce, and the chatbot or the AI, which was only seen on the person's end that's picking up the call, right? It was just providing some good facts and maybe links to, hey, I want to remind you that these are the rules and regulations, or something that the kid should be aware of. And it's on you if you want to talk about them or if it's contextually appropriate to mention this. But again, it was kind of this live guide that was popping up all this useful information during the call. So I thought that was a neat idea on how AI could kind of supplement this interaction.
Yeah, that is a great example. I think what I am cautious of is how AI is not new, right? Artificial intelligence is not a new
Yeah,
concept. Practical applications of AI are not new, but so many people have gotten caught up in generative AI thanks to ChatGPT, the
yeah,
tailwind
yeah,
I'm
and
providing.
LLMs, and they think that's all AI
LLMs
is,
and
right? Yeah,
exactly right, right. It's become widely available to to the consumer who are non necessarily technical people. And there seems to be this phenomenon happening where not only is it like the shiny new toy, but also, oh, this must be easy to do because it's commonplace and it's everywhere. And I suspect that may lead to this implementations which are not necessarily strategic and well thought out,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's part of it. The other thing that sort of keeps me up at night, I guess, as I would say around AI, is data privacy and data protection, right? The amount of data that humans are generating, it's obviously more now than ever in throughout our history, and it's increasingly exponentially growing. In order to enable AI models, data, you need more and more and more of it. In countries like the United States, we don't have any kind of regulation, federal regulation around data privacy and data protection. I live in California,
Mm,
and so I've been exposed to CCPA since 2018. And any national company or any international company that operates in California, you're at least impacted by CCPA.
yeah.
But trends, can compare that with Europe and GDPR, where there's a bit more strict regulatory influence over how data is being protected and privatized, anonymized, even. I think a lot of companies here don't necessarily understand the impact of, okay, we see AI, it seems easy. Let's hire some data scientists and machine learning engineers and build out this phenomenal application. Then on the back end, how do we ensure that the data we're leveraging is going to be protected?
Hmm.
And what's the value of that protection, right? Because anonymizing data in and of itself doesn't make it secure, right? You can take elements of, like for me, for example, there aren't too many people, as you might guess, with my first name who live in my city.
Hmm.
Um, you get some information about me, my name, my house, my address, my family. I think with 13 pieces of information, there was a study shown you can re-anonymize anonymous data,
Wow.
right? And so as that data is being exposed to different AI applications that are public facing, to me, the exposure that's being created is, lack of data protection, lack of data privacy. So I'm hoping that's something that's being thought of as well, in addition to building use cases which have like a good human side and a good financial side for organizations.
Well said. Well said. So, looking forward, what would you say that are some of those key trends or innovations in data strategy that you think will shape the retail landscape in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I would say the probably top of mind, George, is really being able to integrate data strategy at an enterprise level. Like I said, I still see we have a client right now we're talking with where they understand data, so that's good. They understand the value of aligning business strategy with data strategy. That's good. But the executives, because their own goals are tied to their own divisional performance, they're still not thinking about data strategy in an integrated way.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing is, companies like Google or Tesla or Meta, to me, like we often think of them as tech companies. To me, they're all data acquisition companies because they understand inherently how valuable the data that they're acquiring is through whatever applications they're putting out there, right? But then they understand at the enterprise level how to integrate that data to make good
Mm,
decisions. I think that's still coming. That's still evolving in retail. The other thing I think I would say is from a more technical perspective, we might see, or maybe again, I'm being hopeful, is more federated AI. So back to kind of data protection. And I have so many consumers coming in to operate with me through different channels, whether it's traditional retail storefronts or online websites or the call center. And I need to keep that data protected, but I want to use that data to deliver a more automated experience and leverage AI. How can I use models like federated AI to kind of help keep myself engaged with trends as they're evolving,
yeah.
but also ensure that my data about my consumers are being protected?
Well said. Well, thank you so much, Zane, for being on the Lights on Data show, putting the lights on, optimizing retail operations through data strategy. Really appreciate it. Do encourage people to check out Zeed as well. And yeah, any closing words from your end?
Data is life, George. We're at a very special time in human history where data is the most valuable resource in the world today, right? And for people and for organizations to really understand what their data means, how to use it,
Hmm.
that will, help you grow top line, help you manage bottom line, help you manage customer experience. But data, you must embrace your data in today's day and age. So, thank you for making the time to chat with me. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
Likewise. Thank you.